This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so now I'd like to call the January 14th, 2021 meeting of the Architectural Review Board to order. Our first order of business is to amend our 2021 meeting schedule to include an organizational meeting in February. I assume this requires a vote. As everyone got the revised, Aileen, thank you for sending this out. So this is the revised schedule, which would include an organizational meeting at the beginning of whenever next month's meeting would be. So is there a motion to accept?
I'll make a
Steve?
motion.
Make a motion to accept the amended schedule for 2021.
Okay, is there a second? John Zabel?
Yeah, John Zabel, member. I will second the motion to accept the schedule for meetings as amended.
All right, all in favor by raising your right hand? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? None. So that passes unanimously. Approval of the minutes for the December 10th. I don't remember what the dates were. The top of this, I'm just looking now, the meeting minutes, the top of this says December 11th. I think the meeting was December 10th. That's the only thing. So are there any comments on, other than that, on the meeting minute? We can go around the room quick. Shannon?
That was just the date I did.
Okay. We'll go around the room quick. Shannon, any comments on the meeting minutes from last month?
Shannon Hovan, member. No comments on the meeting minutes from last month, Jamie.
John Zabel?
No comments.
Tom Sarkowitz?
No comments.
Steve Law?
No comments.
I have Jamie Miller, chairman, no comments. Is there a motion, please?
Steve,
Law?
Vice Chair, I make a motion to accept the minutes of December 11th as written.
Second? Shannon?
Shannon Hovan, member. Second to accept the minutes from the December meeting as written.
All in favor, raise your right hand. Is approval? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Meeting minutes from December pass unanimously. Okay, so now we're on to kind of the reason for our meeting today, which is the revisions to the application form. I'm assuming everyone received individually, so we didn't break any rules, but we the revised, Steve and I kind of put our heads together, went back and forth a few times and came up with this as a format that we hope took into account a lot of your comments. We did some other editing and try to condense and make it a little more concise. So I think, again, maybe we could go around. We have it up. We're sharing the screen. Thank you, Smitha. But maybe we go around the room quick and we'll get everyone's input on this. So I'm going to go into Shannon, please.
Shannon Hovan, member. Jamie, can I go a little towards the end? I'm not sure why, but this is the first time I'm seeing this.
Okay, not a problem. John Zabel.
Yep. Good evening, John Zabel, member. Hi, everyone. Just a couple things, and thank you guys for doing this. It's definitely different than when we had seen it before. So I think you guys generally did a good job. Just a couple overarching things, and then I'll go into some specifics. Just I love the idea of the checklist, which is the second page. Well, let me start with the first page. The first page is what it is. It's all the applicant information that we discussed before, and then we're asking a couple questions there. Susmitha presumably would apply the next meeting date, and therefore, Susmitha, what is the application deadline? 1 week before? 2 weeks before?
You know, typically zoning commission has meetings in the second week of and fourth week of every month. So sometimes it so happens that somebody comes in the fourth week and they're automatically referred to A or B to save time. And we are in the, it comes to us and then it goes back to zoning commission. So usually they give it to me like sometimes 1 week in advance.
Okay, I think we got to be consistent there, and those of us as members know what that is, what the separation would be between those. I saw that it's on there, and I said, oh, we definitely want to make sure we have enough time and not always potentially be forced into some special meeting. That's just something that came to mind, that we're including that, providing the next meeting date, and then including a deadline. Just the last paragraph there, I agree with that. I would just say in the attached application checklist, which should be attached as the second page of this form, and then I just said are not represented as part of this application, meaning the application that you're referring to up above. Under application checklist, the first paragraph on that second page, I would just, in the last sentence there, the applicant may submit other supporting documentation. I wouldn't even say, because say they have something that they think would be unique to their project that they want us to see, that's not a photograph or other document. I would just say documentation they believe may assist. Again, we don't want them to throw the whole kitchen sink at us, but they've done this before, presumably, and might have something that they've presented to another ARB that they found to be important. Again, I'm not going to go into specifics on the other things yet. 2, 3, and 4, I still don't see them as checklist items. You know what I mean? That's still, I think that more is outlining what our plan of attack is and what they should be doing during the meeting, not necessarily the checklist, especially the fourth one, saying that since we're an advisory board, a favorable recommendation doesn't mean it will be approved. I don't think that's part of the checklist. I don't know where else that goes. I think we got to put it somewhere, and I don't know if it belongs as part of the application, that they're also signing that they understand that. I think that's something we talked about last time, is if they're signing that, they're agreeing that applications received after the deadline wouldn't be reviewed. They will have someone available for questions, and that they understand the night that they're coming to our meeting, they're not leaving with some sort of approval. I think that's all important stuff that they would be signing, that they understand that stuff, not necessarily that it's part of a checklist. That's just a general thought that I had. A couple specifics. I like the items that were included in the checklist. Maybe just reconfigure, I think, where some of them are. Like, yeah, the design concept narrative, that typically has been the first thing that we've received as part of an application. But I'd say typically then you'd look at a site plan sheet. Again, at least in my industry, you kind of start with the 30,000 foot view and then you kind of dig down. So maybe just put the site plan sheet after the narrative. That way we're getting the bigger picture stuff like the neighborhood context, the grading, parking, landscaping, and going everything outside in photographs of the surrounding area, and then working into the more microscopic scale of asking for elevations and specific floor plans. The second bullet under proposed exterior elevation sheet, all exterior material selections including color choices. I like that, but it seems somewhat redundant to the request for that in the elevations there. And unless that was supposed to be separate, I don't know. And then just a couple wording things like colored last bullet there, colored renderings of the proposed elevations, I think are helpful. Instead of colored renderings of the elevations of the proposed, that seemed out of place there. Under floor plan, 2 scale plans of each level, including the roof or a roof plan. And then I would say instead of indication of the project's square footage, just summary of the project's square footage broken down by floor of all new work along with, and that looks good. The only other thing would be some of these things like lighting. I think rather than putting the page numbers under the more the larger sections like proposed exterior elevation sheet, I think we could point out that the exterior lighting concepts are on X page, because that's a lot of the stuff I think that's been getting lost. To put that wide range of pages, we're kind of basically telling them to look at the whole document again. But that's basically it. I mean, I got other minor textural stuff, but again, I think it was a great job just reconfiguring some things. And I think I pointed out at last meeting, I think they should be signing to 2, 3, and 4 on the checklist, that they have an understanding that those are the expectations outside of the checklist. That was it.
Okay, Jamie Millward, Chair. I think I'm just thinking in my head how to best do this, and I think maybe we should have. I'm open to however we want to do it, I guess, but maybe we should be responding to some of John's comments. I'm feeling a lot of people are going to have similar comments, so I'd just like to throw out there, maybe one of the things we can discuss now and have everybody weigh in on this is whether or not we even have the page numbers at all. Steve and I left them in there, weren't really sure if it was necessary at all, because really they should be referring to the manual. And you can even make a case that procedurally going forward, if the manual ends up getting changed and we add things to it, now the page numbers are different, and then you're redoing the application checklist. So I think one of the things that might be consistently brought up is whether or not we have page numbers. So maybe we can just start with that one, and then I'm open to whether we just jump forward with everyone else or hit on John's comments while they're fresh. So Shannon, you want to weigh in on that?
Shannon Hovan, member. Yeah, Jamie, now that you're mentioning potential revisions in the future, I think that could get convoluted and a little bit messy. I don't know that we need those page numbers there. I like the idea in theory, because then it doesn't, there's no excuses for them. Like, here's where you find this information to draw from. So it's not included. There's really not much more we can do to help them in that process. But as long as the application and the design guidelines are in the same location on the website and they're easily accessible so that they can be looked at the same time while they're doing this, I don't think that those numbers need to be there, personally.
Okay, thanks. So John, you have any thoughts? Now I know you discussed moving the numbers around, but any thoughts on whether they're there at all or not?
No, John's a Bell member. I think that makes perfect sense. The one thing possibly to reiterate, maybe in the checklist, is maybe an overarching statement in one of those first paragraphs, reiterating that we have these guidelines, and when working through the checklist items, something about care should be taken, or that's probably a little too flowery, but they should be referring to specific sections of the guidelines which speak to those items that we're asking for. You know what I mean? Because in a lot of cases, our guidelines do point out, like for elevations, what some of our expectations are relative to adjacent structures. And maybe that would be more pertinent, is just a reminder that each of these bullets pertains in some way to something that's already in the guidelines rather than the page numbers. I agree with you. If you do make a change, then you got to go back, change this. And overall, we're probably not going to be asking for anything additionally anyway. So,
Okay.
yes, I agree.
Tom Sarkowitz, comments on that?
I would keep the page numbers. Maybe we could put up in the little summary above to again reference the guide, but I get the point about like if we ever revise the guidelines, then we have to revise the application checklist. But do we really see ourselves revising the guidelines that much? I'm not sure. I like the page numbers. They, underscore the need to be looking at the guidelines to the applicant.
Okay, Steve Law.
Steve Law, Vice Chairman. Jamie, as we discussed earlier, I'm not a fan of putting the page numbers there. I don't think our guidelines are that extensive that we need to show them the way to find what we're looking for. Yeah, I don't think we need really. We should be responsible to direct them to find the information. I just if we're not doing it for all the bullet points, we're only doing it for some of the bullet points. So I'm not in favor of keeping the page numbers there. I think you got to put the onus on them to go through the whole thing. And maybe John's right. Maybe John's recommendation to put a statement in the first paragraph, I think that might suffice.
Okay, so I'm Jamie Miller, Chair. So I concur with what Steve has said. I was also thinking, geez, it's not like our guidelines are 150 pages and they're gonna have a tough time finding what they need. And so, but I think adding a statement, I'm just looking back at the cover page, it kind of does say about being familiar with the guidelines, but I think reiterating that again on here and taking off the page numbers would be fine. But I'm not sure that we need to have the page numbers. So, okay, so I think I'm hearing kind of John Zabel. Go ahead.
Just as a point of order, Jamie, John Zabel, member, do we want to, again, I know we talked about it and we've already gone a couple different places tonight. Do we want to make this live on someone's screen? And if we're going to be changing these things, because we could get in a round and round dialogue and be talking about all these changes and no one's actually changing them, so we see how they look. Like, I think we're to that point where if we're going to be making, or we talk about, okay, here's some good language in that paragraph, boom, and we've got it covered and it's in there and everyone's happy. And I don't know if we're there yet. But
yeah, Jamie Miller, Chair. So Smitha, you and I had kind of emailed on this. I thought, is that something you're able to do, and do it live or not?
Right now?
Well, yeah, I think that's what John is suggesting. Is is there a way for us to be making these changes? And this is the issue. I mean, I guess there is, but you're gonna.
I can do it, Jamie. John Zabel, member. I could do it. We could do it in track changes. We'll see what's changed. I've got it up on my screen already. I mean, I could.
If you want,
I'm the presenter.
Yeah, I was going to say that the reason I said is I'm working on a small laptop and I'm very comfortable typing when I have a mouse pad next to me. So I can make John the presenter and he can start tracking changes and doing it if he's comfortable, if he's on a desktop. It's more easier for me to work on a desktop for some reason.
All right, so Jamie Miller, Chair. So John, if you become the presenter, you want to kind of make these changes? I mean, the issue is there's a lot of little things which I agree with all of your comments. I think generally speaking, little, so it's not even about changing it around.
Okay, I'm making.
We need to decide, like, I don't disagree. Number 2, 3, and 4, either we change the title and doesn't just say application checklist, it's application checklist and some other things, and then 2, 3, and 4 might be able to stay, or we take 2, 3, and 4 off and we put it onto the first page. But can
you guys see my screen now? John Zabel, member.
Yes.
You guys see it? Okay.
We're trying, honestly, I was trying to get this to be, when I said condensed and concise, but Jamie Miller, Chair, when I said to make this condensed and concise, I was trying to get this honestly onto a page of the application and a page for the checklist. So moving 2, 3, and 4 from the checklist onto the application page, is that just going to make it be like a page and a quarter? Or are there some things on here that, like, you started talking about next meeting date and application deadline, and I'm not even sure that belongs on there. I'm not, they come in and they pick up the application, or they download it, I guess, and print it out. And I don't know. So just Steve Law, I saw you raise your hand. Go ahead.
Well, as Steve Law, Vice Chairman, I was kind of questioning that as well. The next meeting date and the application deadline on the application form. That's the intent there is for the applicant to fill those two dates out. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, there is no hard and fast deadline. We have been very flexible with this whole thing. So it's
Yeah.
up to you guys if you want to make a deadline.
Well, and the other point, Jamie, I was going to say is, I think it's just a matter of graphics. If we want to get 2, 3, and 4 from the checklist onto a one-page application, then it's really just a manipulating the font size and squeezing everything down. I don't know if John, if you want to try that to see if we can fit it in on that.
Yeah, Johnsville, we're already at 11, which is getting, I mean, it's this Cambria font, which I'm not too familiar with, but
Yeah.
I mean, well, actually it's all not in Cambria. It looks like we got a mix of Times, which Times I guess is the.
But I would, Jamie Miller Chair, so even as you do that, if you look at the application page, and I know it's on every zoning application I've ever really come across, but do we really need to say this property is located on the blank side of the street, approximately blank feet from the intersection? I mean, if we just say the property address, is it really necessary to use up that, those 4 or 5 lines with that? I always wondered why everyone felt like that was just so necessary on every application. So things like that could, maybe be eliminated and help us kind of make this thing graphically look good.
Well, John's a Bell member. You definitely don't need this last sentence. Use an additional sheet to draw our sketch.
Yeah.
We're already asking for all that, so that can go.
Yep. And Jamie Moore Chair, and frankly, is it pertinent to us that it has assessor's map and lot number and everything? I know that goes to zoning applications and ZBA and everything, but is that pertinent to us? I would kind of, unless someone convince me otherwise, I'm not sure that it's Steve.
Yeah, Vice Chairman Steve, well, I agree, Jamie. That really is more intended for a zoning document.
Yeah. So that also, Jamie Moore Chair, potentially could come out. So, okay. Steve Law, go ahead.
Also, your point about the property is located on the west side, east side of street name, approximately feet from the intersection. Again, that may be a little bit, I don't know if that's more elaborate than we need.
Yeah, Jamie Moore, I agree. What's it doing for? Why do we need that information? What is it possibly helping us if we have the address? Maybe, this was before there was, you go online and there's Google Maps and Google Earth and you can just look at where everything is. That's, I think, outdated. I don't think it belongs. So again, I think it'll help us keep this thing condensed and not becoming, I'd love to keep this as a 2-page concise. Let's put in there the only things that we need. Let's eliminate the things that are superfluous and aren't helping us judge an application. So I'm following. So John, do you want to, I'm not sure how, John, respond to this. So do you want to make changes? Should we continue on with Tom's comments on this while you're doing that? Where do you?
Yeah, John's a Bell member. Like I said, I think what you did is fine. I went through my comments. Either we accept them and track changes, or you go through people. Like, you know what I mean? If no one has a problem with anyone else's changes, you make them, you see how it looks, you keep them in track change mode, because maybe we'll find something. Right now, track changes is still on. I just have it frozen, so we're working with it. It's still tracking everything. If we disagree with something later, we just bring it back.
Okay, so let's continue on then, because I don't think the rest of the things, the grammatical things and a couple word changes, I mean that's all fine. It's going to read better, right? The minute you said, I was like, oh yeah, that'll read better. That was, I think, easy. So let's move on to Tom and see if there's any other things that, we might be talking about here as far as how this both looks and the information is included. So Tom, please, go ahead.
All right. On application form number 4, it says property owner if applicant. Should that say if not applicant? Because then we can just fold property owner into applicant, number 1.
Yeah,
That
probably should say, okay.
I don't know.
How
if
about
I'm
this,
just-
Tom?
Yeah, that's fine.
I don't know why it's, I'll figure that out, but Jamie, John Zabel, member, do you mind if I just make it unless someone has a major objection? I'm just making them and then
Jamie Moore, chair. I think that's how, otherwise, we're gonna go round and round. So people are gonna have to raise their hand. I'll try and keep my eye on everyone and speak up if there's something that seems out of place. So Tom, continue on though with your comments.
Okay. The last statement on the application form, it just reads a bit choppy to me. So I rewrote it, and let me know what you think about this one. But I rewrote it to say, I understand this application shall not be accepted unless all required materials outlined in the application checklist are not included upon submission of said application.
Jamie Moore, chair. I mean, I think that's fine. As I read it, that sounded better than what's written on here. So,
Okay.
You got to read that through. So to let John, I guess, actually quick type it in.
Oh yeah, I could type that. Just give me 1 second.
Are you able to make Jamie Moore chair? All right. So I'm not realizing, Tom, that you're able to make edits on this.
You can't. Tom,
No.
you can't unless I give you control. John
That's right.
Zabel.
I was going to type the statement into the chat.
Oh, okay, and then I'll cut and paste it. Perfect. See these techie folks.
Yeah. Okay. Well, why don't you, Tom, why don't you continue on with your point? So that's something we're going to do, and we'll see how that reads. But why don't you continue on though with other points that you
Okay.
might have?
Tom Sharkwood's number. Now I'm on the application checklist. Just a formatting thing. We have checkboxes for our main headers of design concept narrative and proposed exterior elevations and the rest, and then a bullet point for everything under that. Can we just flip that? So the design concept narrative headers are the bullet point, and then everything else is a checkbox. I think it would reinforce the fact of that it's a checklist. And then second bullet point under proposed exterior elevations, instead of saying all exterior material selections, I was thinking maybe we could say photographs of and/or physical material samples of all selections, including color choices. Because I just don't want the applicant to tell us that, oh, it's brick, or oh, it's siding. I'd rather see exactly what they mean. And then I would add another.
Tom, can you go back? I'm sorry, I was actually typing that in because it did something wonky, but.
Okay. So the second bullet point under proposed exterior elevations, instead of saying all exterior material selections, I would say photographs of and/or physical material samples of selections.
So Jamie Miller, chair. So before, John, you make that change, you had discussed perhaps consolidating bullet point 1 and 2 because it was redundant. So that's my number 1 comment. I want to make sure before you make the change. And then number 2, I guess, are we going to, is it practical to say that we're going to be able to require them to have not just building elevations, but either physical samples or photos of what they're going to do? I mean, I love the idea too, but that's you could make a case that's kind of asking quite a bit to try and get them to pin it down that specifically. John Zabel, comment?
John Zabel, member, I think that would be a good place maybe for in lieu of, like if they couldn't, then we'd accept something else, Tom, right? Maybe just that they show it on the map, right? We expect this, but in lieu of being able to provide us with that, to your point, Jamie, you go with maybe softer, that at a minimum, they need to be shown on the plans, but it's recommended. That's the problem with saying, I guess with that language at the bottom of the first page, you're signing, you're going to give us all this. And then we're over here on the other page saying, okay, do your best to give us this, but at a minimum, give us that, I guess.
Steve, I saw your hand up a minute ago. Jamie Miller, Chair. Steve, I saw your hand up a minute ago. Comment?
Yeah, Steve Lowe, Vice Chair. I don't know, John, how the mechanics of this is going to happen, but one of your points that I thought was well taken was the order of those bullet points, meaning looking at the site first. Yeah, unless it affects the way we do this, maybe it's not critical that we do it right now. But I know we're kind of in this conundrum of requiring certain things. I think if you guys remember a couple years ago, there was things that we really wanted, and then there was some things that were on a wish list, and we've kind of gotten away from that. I'm not saying we should go back to that by any means, but I think John's point about in lieu of, we probably want to consider that, so that we don't want to scare people away because they have to sign and commit that they're providing everything.
Jamie Moore, Chair. I kind of agree too, because think about it. You're looking at a building facade. So what are we requesting? Are the window frames in the color, the siding, the roofing, the masonry, any brick? So there potentially is quite a lot there to either have physical samples of, or for them to scout down a photograph of exactly what they're looking for. So I'm not sure how to word it. I'm just not sure we should make it be a requirement to have those things. Tony, so that's something we're still have to. Tom, go ahead.
Just to go back on that point, I'd still like to keep the photographs or physical samples. They don't have to be exact, but if the material call out just says brick and we approve brick and it turns out to be like white brick, or like just straight red brick, I think we really run into a problem. Or if somebody wants to do some kind of, stone selection or stucco or like a clapboard siding, I'd like to see what they're looking for. And I mean, Google Images, you can find anything. I don't think it's that hard. And I think, how can an applicant have a whole building that they're trying to get approved without material selections? It just, it seems weird to me that they wouldn't have that already. That's just my point. I guess we can discuss it further at a different date, but the third bullet point on proposed exterior elevations says all elevations shall indicate roof pitches, wall heights, and ridge heights. I'd like to add one more thing into there, as general outline of adjacent properties if it's an infill project. I don't know the best way to word that, but I think it's important. And then the second bullet point under floor plans, it just reads wrong. Indication of project square footage, including, I would say, including overall per floor and existing versus new, if applicable. And those were my comments.
Okay, so
Jamie,
John Zabel, go ahead.
Zabel member. Just quickly, I was, as Tom was talking, I don't know if you guys saw, I was typing here. Steve, I think you were shaking your head. Yes, you saw where I was going here.
Yeah.
Under all exterior material selections, including color choices, and then I've softened it with applicants are encouraged to provide photographs and our physical material selections during the project review meeting, whatever we want to call, I see a thumbs up from Tom. What do we want to call it during the
presentation.
Yeah,
during their presentation to the ARB?
Yep.
Sure. Okay, Jamie
Okay,
Moore.
and let's get to the next couple things Tom had gotten to, where we could fit those, I guess. Tom,
Yeah,
what was that under? You had one under elevations, or no, floor plan. Let me go back to this. All markup. I had already started to, I didn't agree with indication either. I said summary of the, and then I liked what you had said. I don't know what the others think, but.
Jamie Moore, Chair. Tom, why don't you repeat that? Because I think it sounded good too. Why don't you repeat that one for John as well?
Okay, Tom Sharkowitz, member. Going off what you have written, John. Summary of the project square footage, including overall, per floor, and existing versus new, if applicable.
Okay, and then John Zabel, member, you had something under, there was something else that you had, I think.
Jamie Moore, Chair. It was about the in the elevations about the general surroundings. I think, Tom, is what you were referring to. So that's one we probably, it's another one I think we should talk about. What is it that we really want here? So this is maybe everyone can kind of weigh in, but Tom, why don't you repeat what you said though, so we all can hear it again?
Tom Sharpitz, member. I said general outline of adjacent properties if infill project.
Okay, so Jamie Millward, Chair. So I guess when you say infill project, you're not, Tom, you're not just meaning you're down on the green and you're filling in between touching two adjacent buildings necessarily, are you? Or are you?
Tom Sharpitz, member. Yeah, that's what I had in mind, actually, Paradise Green. Yep.
Oh, all right. So Jamie Millward, Chair. So, okay. So if you are talking where you're touching adjacent buildings, so you're not necessarily talking about the street the street context of adjacent buildings. I'm trying to imagine where in town that might happen, because what you're suggesting would apply maybe on Barnum Avenue, right? It could apply down on the green, but it wouldn't apply anywhere on Lordship Boulevard. That wouldn't, so you wouldn't care. What you're trying to get at doesn't care what happened on Lordship Boulevard. It's not as far as relating to adjacent buildings.
That's correct. Infill, by infill, I meant touching two other buildings.
Okay, so anybody want to weigh in on this? Shannon, you want to weigh in on this particular item?
I just wrote a couple things down, Jamie, if you don't mind. I just run through them really fast. They're not super extensive, but on the first page at the bottom, I think it should say applicant signature and not just signature. That's nitpicky, but I think it sounds better. And number 2 has applicant representative in parentheses, if not applicant. I think that language should be consistent with number 4. So not if different, just keep it if not applicant. So that 2 and 4 are the same, have the same language. On the second page, I don't know if we've decided yet, but if the page numbers are getting eliminated, then the last sentence in paragraph 2 can be deleted. Or scroll up, John, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Where are we?
Where it says page numbers refer to specific references within that can, if we're going to delete the numbers, that should also go.
Okay. I don't know. John's a bell member. I don't know that we decided on that. That was going to be one of the last things that I took out just in case.
Okay. And sorry, Shannon Hovian member, I was just, if numbers 2, 3, and 4 move to the first page, as we've been discussing as a group, then I don't think we need number 1 at the top. I think those can just be 2 paragraphs. And then I would suggest that the 4 things we have listed in the checklist are numbered. So number 1, design concept narrative with a checkbox. Number 2, site plan, and then checkboxes. Number 3, proposed exterior elevation, checkboxes. That's just a suggestion. And lastly, we have proposed exterior elevations, but nothing else is worded as proposed, even though everything is technically proposed. So maybe either everything says proposed, like proposed site plan, or nothing says proposed.
Jamie Miller, Chair. Okay, Shannon, I think all those make sense to me.
Those are kind of nitpicky, but just
but
the language is clear.
I also was wondering if you wanted to weigh in on Tom's comment about about referencing specifically the infill project.
Shannon Hovian member, I think that's a nice addition. It would be really nice to see adjacent properties, even if it's just, thin black lines showing those properties, so we can have a sense of place. As opposed to, I know we're technically going to see that on the site plan, but it would be nice to see in a closer, more built-up drawing.
Jamie Moore, Chair. Yeah, agreed. So, all right, so let's keep moving along. I think we're going to get through this, I guess. John Zabel, go ahead, John.
Just quick thought on that, and I agree. I'm going to remove proposed because I think we all know it's proposed. Leave it as not proposed. To Shannon's one point, but to Tom's point, I think we could say something about elevations of immediately adjacent structures or something, if applicable. Then that way they don't feel inclined if it's like a rider's landing that you guys heard, and there's no buildings within, a city block of that project. So the character of adjacent buildings isn't as applicable to that as it would be Barnum Ave, Paradise Green, somewhere else where they're going to be doing infill. So maybe there's a way we could incorporate that they don't feel inclined if they have a large property that they're developing that they have to give us that. Because obviously there's a cost associated with drawing that in, scaling it, if it's not an adjacent building. Just a thought.
Okay, Jamie Miller, Chair. So Tom, did you have further comments? I was going to move on to Steve, unless you have other thoughts, comments.
Nope, that was it. I guess the only thing I have, Shannon covered it with changing the page or the bullet numbering of the checklist, but that was it.
Jamie Miller, Chair. I agree with that too. You're right. If we're going to move 2, 3, and 4 out, then number 1 doesn't need to be number 1. There is no numerals to it. So I agree with that part too. So, all right. So Steve, the only way I haven't heard from now is Steve. So Steve, why don't you chime in with some of your thoughts on this?
All right, Steve Love, Vice Chairman. I agree to Tom's idea in concept. Somehow we got to figure out how we define it as an infill or in an open meadow. But I think maybe John's right about maybe the language needs to say immediate adjacent buildings, something to that effect. Where did we go?
I'm sorry,
Um,
I'm just goofing around with
Yeah.
trying to get this to fit.
And so we took away item 1, which was, can you go back to that, John?
Yep,
Oh, okay.
right here.
All we did was take away, yeah, I get it now. So Jamie, I don't know. My only concern there is we don't want to be too overwhelming in what we're asking for. The one other thought, I think somewhere do we ask for photographs of the site and immediate surrounding areas? Have we been getting those on previous applications? I'm trying to recall some of the previous applications. I know like on an infill project, we would be very concerned about adjacent buildings. But if it's a new project like Ryder's Landing, maybe that's not as required.
So, Jamie Moore, Chair. So, Steve, are you suggesting, on that site plan, the bullet, well, it's not going to be a bullet point. We're going to make that a checkbox, I think. Are you asking if the photographs of the site and the immediate surrounding areas belongs on the list at all? Is that what you're kind of asking the group?
Yeah, maybe it needs to be, I think maybe if we, like John suggested, switch the bullets and the check boxes, and then go through the items and look at each box, and they're gonna go through there and they're gonna either check it or not check it, right? So maybe we need to see that graphically.
Well,
John's a bell member. Jamie, just quick. As I'm reading through exterior elevations of all of them, though, I think this needs a little reorg in and of itself. So it's like, for example, right here, all elevations. This should be before we're asking for material selections, I think. So if no one has a problem, I'm just going to move that up. So it'll be elevations shall include this. Elevation shall indicate. Now all exterior colors. We're talking about the colors, and then the photographs or color or physical materials. Then we get to lighting. I think this colored renderings here can go under what they shall include. Does anyone have an issue with that? And then that gets to your point, Steve. I think that would fit in better under there. This colored renderings of the proposed elevations are helpful. I think that just goes generally.
Yeah, I agree, John.
It's not a specific thing that we're asking for. We're just saying they're helpful.
Jamie Moore, Chair. So, I mean, I'm not sure where you put that then, or is there some
Right
other
here.
suggested things like photographs of the site and immediate surrounding areas? Are those also, are we going to make that a requirement? Because really, if we put a checkbox by it, what we're saying is you better check every box on there or else your application's not complete.
No, that's
Or
why you see where I moved it. I'm sorry, John's a bell member. It's hard when you got to bounce back and forth. I think it goes right here. Shall include this, this, and this. Colored renderings of the proposed elevations are helpful.
Okay.
It doesn't speak to elevations. Who cares if the elevations are in color? I think to Tom's point earlier, we want to see this stuff in color. Tom?
So Jamie Miller, Chair. So what, to Steve's point about the photographs of the site, are you doing the same? That's the 5th bullet under the site plan. I'm trying to oh, there. So are we, is that is it a helpful thing or is that a requirement?
John's
John.
bell, I think that's a separate bullet. I mean, that's a separate, they may present just a plate or a plan or something of photos. We've gotten that before, and it wasn't tied to any of these other items. It's a standalone, I think.
Jamie Moore, Chair. I don't know. Steve, go ahead. You raising your hand, Steve?
Yes,
Go ahead.
Steve, Vice Chair, maybe that statement about photographs of the site goes following the first one, neighborhood context map. Maybe it goes right in after there because it's talking about the contextual components of the area. Oh, I would put it as part of the same sentence, John.
Jamie Moore, Chair. I think he's talking about up under design concept narrative, John.
No, what I'm saying is right after neighborhood context map to include project location, put it as part of that sentence. That's going to be a bullet. That's going to be a checkbox, right?
Oh, no. That's what I was, John Zabel, member. That's why I think it should be its own checkbox. I'm agreeing with you, but do we want a checkbox right here? But I thought that's not part of the site plans. That's what I was getting at.
Well, it's contextual, it's, I think to Tom or, everybody's point, it's part of the overall contextual relationship of the surroundings, photographs. I don't know. I was thinking it doesn't need to be its own bullet point, but.
Well, Jamie Millward, Chair, I mean, maybe I thought, and I misunderstood you the first time, but we have one bullet point. I think we're going to make those right. I like the idea of making those bullets into boxes, and then it'd be bullet points where the box is now. But the design concept narrative has one bullet point to it. So maybe we don't call that just design concept narrative, and we move the general information about the photographs of the property and site. Maybe it's, the different word for design concept narrative. So it would include the narrative, photographs of the context of the site, all those kind of things, which aren't really site plans or anything else. And maybe that bullet point could then move up. So there's at least a couple bullets underneath that heading, because it's kind of odd that you have one bullet under a heading. I don't know. I'm not sure if you think that makes sense or not.
Yeah, Jamie, Steve Law, Vice Chair, I think that does. And we call it, and we change it from design concept narrative to overall design narrative or something to that effect.
Jamie Moore, Chair, agreed. We'd have to change that language. I do. I think that might read better and balance out, what under each heading, what's included. John?
Just thinking about what we've gotten though, we've gotten a design concept narrative. So I don't mind that being all the bullet there is telling you what needs to be included in that. I like the larger bullet points that we have now, or the larger check boxes we have now. And again, I don't know that they're even check boxes. You know what I mean? The applicant, they don't necessarily have to check it themselves. So I would kind of disagree, I guess. I like that it says design concept narrative because we've gotten one for each and every site, and that's actually been one of the better parts of the applications, I think. I was thinking the photographs are a standalone checkbox in and of themselves because they're not part of a site plan. They're not part of something else. You know what I mean? I don't want to get lost in that we need the design concept narrative, I guess, and that we need photographs and they're separate entities.
I don't know, Jamie Moore, Chair. I don't know. I hear you, but I think that the word design concept narrative could stay, but it would be part of that bullet point. It would be design concept narrative, short description outlining, but that would be an entire statement. Because I think one of the things, if you went back and look at the old ones, Steve and I were working on it, was trying to have less headings and move the bullets, into a, fewer number of headings. So we put, a lot of stuff got put into site plan because it was site plan related. So, I like the design concept narrative too. And if you like those words, I feel like that could stay and still have, and then that heading would be some different words. Design concept narrative would move down, and then the photographs could be part of it. But I'd like to hear what everyone else has to say too. Steve?
Yeah, Steve Lowe, Vice Chair. John, I don't know how easy it is to flip the bullet points with the check boxes. So graphically, we can see that. Is that something you can do quickly or? Because basically what we're saying is they're going to look through this list and the intent is they're checking off the majority of those items, right?
Jamie Moore, Chair, right. And then that, the little box next to design concept narrative will become the bullet point.
John, you're muted.
John's a Bell member. I'm sorry. Is this how you guys were talking about? And then these would be the check boxes?
Yes.
Jamie Moore, Chair, correct. Yes, that's what we were thinking.
Okay. John's a Bell member. I'll fix it. It just has to do with tab stops.
Yeah, Jamie Miller, Chair, and now as I read this thing, that the photographs, it's the title of that
Right.
bullet point is site plan sheet, and so I
Yeah.
don't think that's where the photographs of the site and immediate surrounding areas are, or that's not where it's going to be. I still like the idea of putting it up in the next one, and moving design concept narrative down and letting it be by the box that you have there now, and we'll have to come up with a different title for that section.
Yeah.
All right. Any other? All right. So Steve, while John, can you want to keep working on that a little bit while we keep talking? Does that work for you? Okay. So Steve, further comments?
Steve, Vice Chair, nothing right now, Jamie, but I'll keep thinking.
Okay. So I want to go back. I wasn't sure, Shannon, if I cut you off, I wasn't sure. You have further comments, or did you run through your list?
Shannon Hovian, member. You did not cut me off, Jamie. The only thing that I know John made a mental note of it, but if we get rid of the page numbers just to eliminate that sentence. I did have two really quick things that are also nitpicky. I apologize, but graphics and clarity are like, I just can't get away from it. But it feels like the right margins are really tiny and the left margin is not. I don't know if that's on purpose or if that's like a town thing, but particularly page 2, there's like ½ inch of space between the edge of our words and the edge of the sheet and lots on the left-hand side. Just a note. And all of the lines on page 1, I think should end at the same point. Like for applicant address, email address, they're all kind of jagged and etc. Those are just graphic things I've noticed while we're going through this, but other than that, for now, that's it.
Okay, so Jamie Miller, Chair, I still struggle with, are we, John, you're madly trying to like make all these updates and everything. And I appreciate what you're doing there. I still struggle with whether or not tonight we're going to have this application in the way we want it. And Or are we just going to make sure we've covered the big picture items and have John then at his leisure kind of, make the last few changes or whatever. And then I think our way around how I did with all you guys was sending it out individually to each one of you one at a time. So then it's apparently, that's okay to do. So I feel like the big ones that we weren't sure on was, number one, whether or not there's page numbers or not. So I think, Tom, I think you were feeling like they belonged, but I'm not sure everyone else was. Is that fair when now that we've talked this through? Tom?
I'll go with the group. It wasn't that big of a deal to me.
Okay, thanks, Tom. So that's one. I'm trying to think if there's other, Jamie Moore chair, by the way. I'm trying to think if there are other parts of this other than, I don't think anyone's going to argue with making this graphically look better and have, the margins be equal. I think I would entrust John to use his judgment based on all our conversations to do that. The format of, do we all agree that the bullet and boxes being switched now? I think that reads better. Are we okay with, well, we need a heading for where it says design concept narrative now, next to the bullet point. Because I think, my opinion, I think design concept narrative belongs next to the first checkbox. And Steve, you had given that a name. What did you say? What could be the name overall or something? Can you wait? What did you say?
Yeah, Steve Love, Vice Chair. I was thinking something to the effect of overall design concepts, or something with overall applied, giving the implication that it's the whole entity of the whole project.
Okay, Jamie Moore chair. I like that. And do we like the idea of taking the word design concept narrative and moving it down to the next box? To the first checkbox, I should say. Any comments from everybody on that? I see thumbs up. Or John, do you have a comment? Or
Yeah, I just think photographs kind of, I wouldn't mind seeing both of those just as bullet points. Like, instead of calling it design concept narrative, just the first bullet is, or narrative of proposed project outlining as its own bullet. And then I think photographs are their own separate thing. They're just contextual photographs of the site and immediate surrounding areas showing context of project or something like that. I just think the design narrative and photographs are different. They both don't fall under the overall project. You know what I mean? The narrative is going to talk about what it is and what it's going to become. The photographs are what is there today.
Jamie Moore chair, though. I'm sorry. Go ahead, John. Sorry.
No, that's fine. And then the rest of it is all proposed stuff.
So, Jamie, I'm Susmita Arora, Town
Yes.
Planner. May I
Yeah.
please interrupt?
Sure.
I just want to let you know that this is all great work, and it is applicable to developers like developers of Riders Lane or Christchurch property or 3044 Main Street, the largest scale developments. But you should also be mindful that not every time we get sophisticated developers. We have individuals trying to redo their lot and do some 3 to 4 unit housing on it, or have small restaurant redesign by a commercial property owner, which comes before ARB. And when those people come, they I can tell you some of the items on this, they don't even know if they would want to, where to pursue that information, or if they want to invest so much, like the landscaping plan indicating the flower types, or, exterior lighting concepts and fixture selections and all that. So I don't know to what level I should, as a staff, accept or reject an application. I mean, I think, Stratford is very, I would say very diverse. You get very wealthy developers investing in the town, and you get very low income people or average middle income people trying to redo their properties, and they don't oftentimes go to that length. So where should I make that judgment, or would you make that judgment call on what gets accepted and what doesn't get accepted?
Jamie Miller, Chair. So to me, it's a very good point that we have talked about before. And, I don't know. So I'm going to start out with a question. I mean, are we opening ourselves up to, kind of, not bad press, but like, is it bad form to have a list and then say, oh, okay, well, you're not that big, we're not going to make you do this stuff. I mean, it makes our list a little bit arbitrary if we treat it that way.
But I mean, I'm sorry to interrupt, but just be very careful, because if a big developer feels like it's an undue burden on them, and if it's a time sensitive issue, they could come back with a legal battle on this, saying, you're unfairly treating one set of people, whereas you're being different with another set of people.
Jamie Miller, that's my point. Are we bad press or legalities? Is there something there, that if we're treating people differently, here's our guidelines and here's our application. So Steve, did you raise your hand? Did you have a comment on this?
Yeah, Steve Law, Vice Chair. We talked about this a year or so ago when we were formulating the checklist and the application. I know we kind of batted it around back and forth. But then again, recently when we started this process, I think Susmitha sent a couple similar, larger city applications. There was the city of Santa Rosa and there was another one, but both of them, I think, if I recall correctly, they had kind of a scaled application. And I think maybe Susmitha, I don't know if that's what you're implying we should be looking at, but
Yes,
that would
exactly.
Projects under a square footage can go under this form, and the projects over 5,000 or whatever the number is need to be more elaborate.
Yeah,
Jamie,
I don't even think, sorry, Susmitha, town planner, I don't even think you should have two different forms, but your form could be saying projects over 5,000 square feet would require additional information such as, landscaping types or mechanical equipment, lighting, etc. And the routine information will be on top for projects less than 5,000 square feet. I mean, I'm just throwing that number there, but I think that could be a way you would categorize and require more information from big developers. And in that case too, I can't assure you that they will get everything that you're asking here. And they're always under this fast track timeline because their financing will, lapse, and they just need to meet a deadline to get financed. And we always bend backwards with them.
Jamie Miller, Chair. Tom Sarkowitz, I know, has had his hand up. Tom, go ahead.
Tom Sarkowitz, member. To fix this, why don't we just say on the application form, instead of shall not be accepted, why not just change it to may not be accepted? And then it's ambiguous. It goes by project. And we'll have to use our judgment based on the scale, like if it's a multi-million-dollar development in town or if it's a gas station.
Jamie Miller, Chair. Tom, that's an excellent idea, I think. And the problem, I like that better than coming up with a square footage or whatever, because I mean, I have two thoughts on this. One is that maybe one of the most important projects we might see is when they do some storefront renovations on the green. And it's going to be important stuff. It's not about square footage. you know, and so how do you define that? You know, and so I feel like we are a pretty powerless group. We all recognize that we're a pretty powerless group, and design does not come at a high priority in the town of Stratford. And anyone who's driven down Main Street and seen where that new braces place took over the bank, unbelievable. And no one's, that's fine. To everyone who's doing work here, the guy who, I don't know who's responsible. Fortunately, it happened before we were, you know, existed, but that's considered fine. You know, and I saw they have well, you all, I assume you guys have all seen it. And so, you know, I'm not sure. I like Tom's idea of saying May, because I think that, you know, maybe it's time, if we believe in good design being beneficial to everyone, the developer, the town, and the people who live here, then let's have this application. And you know what? If you want to do work here, and look, we've been told, oh, we got to be careful because economic development's trying to, you know, spur growth here and everything. But you know, we're not seeing applications beaten down the door, obviously. And I feel like that the one way maybe we can kind of exert some influence is say, hey, you guys want to get something approved by us, we want to see these things. And you know what? Other towns do it. Why do other towns get away with it? They get away with it because people, they have an expectation. If you're going to go to Fairfield or something, that's what you have to do. It's just not the way in Stratford. So I kind of feel like maybe it's incumbent upon us as the new ARB, and we're not that new anymore, to, like, you know, we're not making much of a statement. We're making a little statement here, and we're going to keep our application. We'll change the one word to May, and we're going to start getting people to give us what we need to review their application and try and impress them that we're not against them. We're trying to make your project better, and because we believe in good design. So
Smita, to town planner, you may want to include not applicable for some of these things. If somebody is just doing a storefront redesign and they're not touching the site at all, then some of these elements in this, you know, application form are not applicable to them.
Well, Jamie Moore, Chair, but I think the minute you say May, that covers it, and then their application comes in. And I think what we don't have is a method by which we review. I mean, or maybe we do, but it's not formalized. A method by which we review and accept an application as being complete. I mean, I know we just kind of, we emailed around, and maybe we just, next time, maybe we work on that part of it of, so Smitha, you take the application in, and I'm not suggesting you and you alone have to look at it and be the one to decide. And maybe it's only 5 of us, maybe we all weigh in, or maybe it's Steve and I, but
well, Jamie,
we'll make that call.
My problem is that, I mean, let's just think about this. The original application and this application both are giving an optional, accommodation for applicants. So how different is this from an original application, except that you just elaborated what mechanical equipment means or what landscaping means? In both cases, you're saying they may choose to skip some items and they may provide some items based on an application.
Jamie Moore, Chair, hang on, Smith. Let me Jamie Moore, Chair. To me, it's not they may not choose to do it. We may not choose to require it, and there's a difference there.
And it doesn't come out in the application.
Up to them to decide that they don't have to fill these things out. It's up to us to decide that they don't need to give it to us.
But aren't we doing that already with the existing application?
Well, I don't, Jamie Moore, Chair, I don't, we didn't start out revising the application necessarily to deal with this particular issue. This is about clarity of application and, realizing that a little bit got thrown together when we first started. So I think we've made the application more concise and clear. And I think we're going to, going forward, we might be taking a harder look at when applications come in. John, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, John Zabel, member. Listening to you and Susmitha and Tom and softening the language, again, I know this is something we don't want to do, but maybe this is a happy medium somewhere in here. And I'm not a lawyer, I'll preface it with that. But what we're asking the applicant to attest to, and I think we batted this around last time, and maybe the answer is finding some middle ground here. Maybe this statement requiring their signature just points to that they've completed the application, they've reviewed our guidelines, they're saying, yes, to the best of my abilities, I've done all this. And then this statement about required materials and whether we're going to hear it or not, I think we could soften that, because not be accepted probably is not the right term either. It should be, may not be heard by us. You know what I mean? It's not that it may be accepted. The word accepted is too strong there. While you guys were talking or reviewing, I said, this has nothing to do with accepting it. It has to do whether it's going to come before us. Maybe what we do is either we soften it to say, I understand that prior to the hearing, I may be requested to bring additional information, to Susmitha's point, and we include some language under the actual application checklist that it's the expectation of the ARB that the majority, if not all of this information is to be provided at the hearing. You know what I mean? That way you're setting these distinctions like, okay, they're signing something here, maybe they haven't gotten it all, because again, some of these applicants are savvy. Maybe we don't need this information totally in advance. Maybe they have someone who's well-spoken with good presentation materials, and that evening of the hearing, we're like, yeah, I get it. They showed it to me. I'm in lockstep with what they're doing. So I think the happy medium would be to soften the language under the signature area. This is just my proposal. Soften the language under or above the signature, saying I've read and understand the guidelines and the checklist, modifying the paragraphs within the checklist to say, look, it's understood that the ARB requests the majority, if not all, this information, and then I may be requested to provide additional information by the board. Something along, I'm just throwing that out there. Something
Jamie,
along those lines. I'll be interested what others
Chair,
think.
John, Jamie Millward, Chair, let me tell you one thing though. I mean, I get all of that, but you're not thinking, because it says, I understand this application may not be accepted, that you're not inferring that means approved, right? I mean, accepted just means it may not be accepted. You hand your application in, and here I'm the developer and I got my package of drawings. I hand it into Susmitha and she says, all right, we're going to review this and get back to you whether or not to make sure it's complete. And then we go back as a group, I'm not sure who that is, but the plural we of whoever that is goes through the application, looks at our suggested requirements, and we say, okay, there's enough there. They've met the requirements. We can review this project because there's enough there. And if there's not, the application is not accepted, we go back to them in short time, I'm not saying weeks later, and say, hey, we need to have X, Y, and Z added to this application. And so I'm not sure.
Jamie,
Yes.
can I just make that Tota, town planner? I've had this conversation in-house with staff in our office, routinely accepting planning and zoning applications too. Of course, ARB is not bound by state statutes, but zoning commission is. And we as a staff cannot not accept any application, even if it's incomplete. as a staff, we are supposed to accept any and every application. We will definitely give them a checklist, and we let them know that their chances of getting approved would be higher if they met all the items on the checklist. But we cannot make that judgment and say to any applicant, I'm sorry, this is not going to be heard at this meeting because this is an incomplete application. That's against state statutes. So
Well,
that has to go to the commission, and they will have to, either reject based on lack of information or continue the hearing. One of those two things happens oftentimes. We do have a checklist too for zoning commission applications, and our checklist has narrative, deed, number of copies, fees, elevations, site floor plans, zoning standards, and notification to neighbors, just boxes. That's it. And I'm not discouraging you. I mean, please do not think that I'm trying to oppose what you're doing here. I kind of really appreciate the effort you all put in this, and this is great. But before you finalize this, maybe you should think how to soften some of this language here, and on what basis would you accept or reject an application? Or you can, I don't know if you would want to go that path, or you could say we'll continue the hearing. I mean, that's a better way of putting it. Maybe saying that the chances of this item being heard in one hearing would be much higher if you provided all of the information below. Otherwise, ARB may request you to come back or something like that. Thank you.
all right, Jamie Miller, Chair. So I've submitted not as many ARV applications, but plenty of zoning applications to lots of towns. And while I'm not suggesting that they don't accept my application, every town I've dealt with will review the application and get back to me saying, you better include X, Y, and Z. And I do it because, just as you suggested to me, that I want to do everything I can to make sure that my application is approved. So I don't know how they kind of get away with that. Because maybe it's accepted in not so many words.
No, so Smita, town planner, let me just correct it. And I'm not saying that, the staff won't advise you. We advise you to provide full information. But if you want to pick up a legal battle and say, no, I want to go ahead and submit as is, and I want to be heard this month, I cannot stop you.
Jamie Moore, Chair. So that's fine. And I don't think that's going to happen that way, just like it doesn't happen the way when I do applications. So we use the word may, and then we can go through and say, hey, we think you're going to be much better off if you submit X, Y, and Z. If they choose not to do it, I guess you're suggesting they still get put in the application, and then we can choose to give them a negative review then and pass it on to the zoning commission.
So we have to just decide which items in these apply to what types of developments. Otherwise, it'll be hard for me as a staff to tell an applicant this is full information or not, for ARB to accept or not accept an application or consider an application, I would say. So how can I make the judgment when an applicant comes and provides me a set of plans, whether the ARB would say this information is sufficient for them or not? That's my problem as a staff, that somebody brings me an application. How can I say that this is complete information or not?
Well, Jamie Miller, Chair, that goes back to whether or not you're trying to do that unilaterally, or whether that's, in conjunction with, with others. I mean, so Smita, as far as legalities in Robert's Rules of Order, if applications came in, is it legal for you and me and Steve to sit down the week before applications are due and go through them, and the three of us collectively make a judgment as to whether or not we're going to suggest that they need to submit more information? Is that a legal thing for us to do?
Yeah, I think every time, normally in the last 1 year, whenever you guys heard an application, you were given an opportunity by email to state whether this application is complete or not, or if you think it's missing something. And I've heard back from some of you, like Tom and John, sometimes they write back and say, hey, we needed this, or maybe they could use this. And then I get back to the applicant and they bring it back in time. That was an approach we considered in the past, and we can definitely sit down and skim through the applications together and, take it by case.
John Zabel.
John Zabel, member. I think that gets back to my point, Susmitha. I kind of hear where Susmitha is going, Jamie. I don't want to be totally obstructionist, and again, I don't know the legalities of it, but I think if we soften the language there to something that, again, I want them to attest that they've read this, they've read the guidelines, they've looked at the zoning regs. No, this project hasn't been hidden as another project and shown up before us before, and they've reviewed the checklist, but more so to attest that they may be asked for additional information and then maybe put in the checklist, the merits of the application may depend upon what's provided. I don't think there's anything wrong with that either. I don't think we're losing a lot of traction if we go about it that way. Like I said, I'd be interested. It seems like it's me, you, and Susmitha going around and around on this, but again, I just don't want to seem obstructionist. I totally agree with where you're going. We don't want garbage put in front of us and then we're stuck at a hearing trying to pick it apart and make the best of it. You know what I mean? That's not what we've been charged with. And it wouldn't be fair to us. But I think we're well established enough that we can assist Susmitha with the decision whether we want to hear it or not. And to say all required materials, again, to Susmitha's point, it may not be all the materials. So I think if we had softened that to the point as I have read and understood this application and the design guidelines and required checklist, and understand that I may be asked for additional information, period, and then beef up the checklist with ARB encourages applicants to have as much of this information available as possible or be able to present it at the meeting, right? Again, not a whole coming at you one fell swoop. I don't know. I'd be interested what the other members have to say, you know what I mean, relative to whether we could do it that way. Again, I've presented in front of boards many times where we haven't been able to get certain documents for whatever reason. The CAD operator's sick, now with COVID, people are out. I think we have to take that into consideration, but someone may be able to come on a Zoom with us and baffle us with, oh my God, look at these beautiful drawings that they've done, and we're going to be accepting of it and not have them sign that, okay, I didn't give you everything I needed. So I'd be interested what others have to say.
Steve?
Steve Law, Vice Chairman. Yeah, I agree that, John, can you scroll down on the application form? That first signature line could be toned down a little bit. I agree with that. And just the fact that we have, unless all required materials are in capitals there is a little strong-handed. But I tend to agree. I think the consensus would be coming around to the point, yeah, we should change it from shall to may. I think that's very positive. That's in the right direction. And I guess I would agree that with some language, we give them the option to, or we'll let them know that depending on what is presented, could be the outcome of whether their presentation is heard or we need more information.
So I can't be more chair. I'm sorry. I'm just jotting down. So a note, a way this could be said. So how would it be if it said, where it says, I understand this application, blah, blah. If it said, I understand that this application will be reviewed for completeness and additional information may be requested to be submitted prior to the project presentation. So it answers Susmitha's issue about she's got no legal right to not accept an application, but we're saying we're going to review it and we may be asking you for more stuff. How does that sound to everyone?
That sounds good.
Okay, so John, you want me to, should I read that back to you? All right, so I said, I understand that this application will be reviewed for completeness, comma, and additional information may be requested to be submitted to the ARB prior to the project's presentation.
John's Bell member, go with that one more time. Request to be submitted prior to the applications.
Prior to the project's presentation. Or, you know, I'm not sure what that
Can we
word-
say prior to being heard by the ARB?
Prior to being heard by the ARB. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the intent. I realize that the project presentation is a little clunky, but that's the idea. Yes, before you get up there and present, Jamie Miller, chair, by the way, before you get up there and present, we could be asking you for additional information. So how does everyone feels? Any input on that last sentence there about how that sounds from anyone?
Much better,
Okay.
Jamie. Steve Law, Vice Chair, much better.
Okay, so wait,
Jamie, John's Bell, really quick. I think we
Yes.
gotta, again, this application checklist, the following must be submitted. Can we say something back to my point earlier of the ARB strongly encourages applicants to provide as much information on this checklist as possible prior to the application. However, you know what I mean? Getting to the point that I said earlier, don't feel like because you didn't present it up front, we're not going to be looking for it at the hearing. You know what I mean? That's a very important piece, I think, is to get to Susmitha's point. Maybe they just, for whatever reason, like I said, I brought up COVID because we're in the middle of a pandemic. I know it's taken longer to get certain things from subcontractors and such. I don't know if you guys have run into the same, but I think we want to make some allowance in this checklist that, okay, you didn't get it to us by the application deadline, but we're still gonna want to see it.
Well, Jamie Miller, chair, I mean, actually, as I read this now, that, you know, this second sentence is just replicating what we just put on the application form. So maybe all it needs to say is completed applications should be submitted for preliminary review, not must be. And the fact that we might ask them for more information, you know, that goes back to the actual application form where it says that I understand that I may be asked for more info. So maybe we just simplify that whole first paragraph. And well, take out the second sentence. Steve.
Yeah, Steve Law, Vice Chairman. Yeah, I agree. It looks like we have some duplication now on the checklist page, on the checklist documentation. We're talking about completed applications must be submitted upon receiving applications. We've already stated that in the application form. So there seems to be some duplication we could delete and maybe make the checklist less restrictive. And here are the checklists that we're looking for.
Jamie Miller, chair. So Steve, be specific. I'm trying to follow what you're saying with what you're suggesting to be done in those first couple of paragraphs on the application checklist.
Yeah, Steve Law, Vice Chair. Well, John, can you scroll down on the application form? So that statement that we just modified, I understand this application will be reviewed for completeness and additional information may be requested to be submitted prior to being heard. Now, if you go over to the checklist, we say that again, and we probably don't need it on the first paragraph of the checklist.
Jamie Moore agreed. That's what I'm saying. The second sentence could come out.
Yeah, agreed.
John Zabel.
Shannon's had her hand up for a while. I'll let Shannon go first.
Shannon, sorry.
No worries. I don't think we need anything except for 8 copies of the required document sets shall be provided for the board's review. A lot of that seems pretty redundant. The applications part, upon reviewing, we'll ask for more information. We just went over that. If it's not complete, it'll be at the next regularly scheduled meeting. I feel like we mentioned the next meeting on the first sheet too.
Yeah.
The applicant may submit other stuff. I don't know that, I think the second page could just be the checklist. The ARB will not hear any applications unless we're getting rid of that, right? Because that's not a requirement anymore for everything to be submitted.
Jamie Moore, Chair. John, go ahead.
Yeah, I think this
Okay.
first completed is gone. I definitely think there. We'll notify. We didn't say that. I kind of agree with you guys, but we didn't say that they'll have another bite at the apple. You know what I mean? Over. And to my point earlier, something here instead of the following must be submitted. The ARB strongly encourages the applicant to submit as much of the below information as possible during the initial application submittal. Again, I'm not wording it correctly. However, you know what I mean? Getting to my point that just because it wasn't within your application, we're strongly encouraging they submit it before. However, we still anticipate and need to see this information at some point in the process. I understand the point of the checklist. Yes, it's good for before, but if they don't have it, they should still be looking at this checklist before they come see us and say, oh shoot, I'm missing half the boxes. I wasn't able to get that, but I got it tonight. Here it is. That's my one thought about at least a narrative at the beginning.
Jamie Moore, Chair. I don't know. I'm not sure that we need to back off. I mean, we're giving them an out, the applicant that is, by saying, you know, that we're going to review it and we'll ask them for more information if we don't think it's enough. Otherwise, you're putting in paper that we want some things or we don't want some things. Here's the list, and we kind of expect this. You submit what you'd like, and then we're going to review it and we're going to say whether we deem it complete or not. We're going to accept your application, and we're going to ask for more information if we think it's necessary. I don't know. So Shannon, go ahead.
Jamie, I agree with you. Submit it, we'll review it. If you need more, we'll let you know. Provide 8 copies of the following material. That's it.
All right, Steve.
I don't think we need more.
Okay, thanks, Shannon.
Hit delete.
What?
You had the first 2 sentences highlighted. If you just hit delete, in addition to the requested information below, the applicant may submit other supporting.
I'm not even sure you need that, or that shouldn't be the first sentence. That should be, you know, just before the checklist or something, not the first thing. You know, the following must be submitted by the application deadline. That's all of the, see, and I think that we can take out this, the ARB will not hear an application. That could come out. We have a checklist.
We get it, John Zabel, member. You get into problems though, again, 8 copies of the required shall be, but you know what I mean? It's again, that whole language thing.
Well, Jamie Moore, Chair, you can take out the word required. Whatever you give us, we want 8 copies.
Why do you need 8 copies?
Well, actually, however many, 6, we,
Because,
Fine.
yeah, the zoning commission typically gets 13 copies of the plans. And we are asking 8 more. I think, I don't know. I mean, they typically give me 1 copy, so I don't need a copy. Why can't we just put it to 5 copies?
yeah, I'm fine. Jamie Moore Chair, I'm fine. The number of copies is not the point. I mean, I think the
Yeah.
point is just that it's whatever number we pick, whatever you're gonna give us, that's how many, we need 5 or 6, whatever number of copies we want. So the following was,
Well, Jamie, John Zabel, I just must be submitted by the application deadline. That's where I'm crossed up, that if they're coming in a little bit after and during the presentation with some of this, I'm just as fine with it.
well, Jamie Moore Chair, I mean, maybe we should be establishing though an application deadline though. I mean, every other place if you miss the deadline, you're not going to be heard. And and that can be, you're going to get to be on the next month. I mean, a lot of times I'll, submit stuff and the agenda's full. All right. So you're going to get put off, for that reason. But I'm not sure that we want to make it our practice to like accept an application. It's not, whatever it is, if it's a week or 2 weeks before the actual meeting, is it too much to ask that you have your application in, a week before with your information? So what's it say? Following must be submitted. Well, the second sentence.
Why don't we move this up to the top? 5 copies.
Yes.
Of the below documents shall be provided prior to the application deadline, right? Or must be submitted.
Mm-hmm.
Must be submitted by the application deadline for the board's review. In addition to the below information, comma, the applicant may submit other supporting document. There you go. Does that work for everyone?
Jamie
Well-
Moore Chair. I mean, I'm okay with this. Any other comments or thoughts from anybody?
I would say 5 copies of the bill of documents should be submitted instead of saying must be submitted.
Jamie Moore Chair, fine.
Or maybe you could say 6 copies, I'm sorry, because you're asking all this information and this may not be in the zoning commission's submittal. So I need one for the office file.
This had a couple of my, John Zabel, member, this had a couple of my edits from before we got on, like, oh boy. Yeah, there were a couple of my preemptive edits before. Namely, I just said supporting documentation. I think it said something else before that.
Yeah, this is now, and you got to renumber on the first page, Jamie Moore Chair. We've moved 2, 3, and 4. Is that going to become 8, 9, and 10? Is that what's happening? Yeah, Jamie Miller, Chair. I mean, I think it does make sense that this is not on the application checklist. So these are the kind of the information you need about yourself and your phone number and all that kind of stuff, and then some general information about what's expected. And then second page is, here's the checklist. Okay. All right. So is there any other big picture things that we've not covered here? Because I'm inclined to say, if John, if you're willing, maybe, make all the other little clerical things that we've talked about, and then one at a time you can share, without it, we've been hard at work here for a couple hours here now on this, which it's all good. It's all, I think we've made this a lot better. We talk it all through. We understand what it is that we're asking for and why. So maybe we don't try and vote on, it's okay. We don't have an application in front of us, so maybe it's, John makes other little tweaks. We share again. Next month we vote. Does anybody have any other bigger picture stuff that you feel like we need to address now, or is this, we're feeling pretty good about this?
Just me, the Atota town planner. I would like to applaud you all for working so diligently on this application and, bringing it to a really, almost perfect form. And I know John will be working on minor edits. If you are able to take a vote, considering that some minor suggestions or edits could be made later, just because I know there's one development in the pipeline and it may be presented to the ARB pretty soon. And I would like for them to have this checklist before them if they ask, what needs to be submitted to the ARB.
Jamie Miller, Chair, I'm fine with that. And I don't know what the protocol is about making, after the fact, other little edits, but I'm open to, if there's some wording we can use about the general, form that we have here, that we vote on that and accept it. I'm fine with that. So, if someone would like to make a motion, we can do that right now. Steve Law.
Yeah, Steve Law, Vice Chair. Just a picky graphic thing. I'm following Shannon's lead, but John, can you scroll up so we can see the heading on both? So maybe we just highlight application form versus application checklist. Make those bolder and put them in the correct order. So graphically, there are two forms that look similar.
Mm-hmm. Got it. All right,
And
John
then
Sabell.
just a point of, I'll brush that up. Obviously, I'm going to accept track changes because, right? I mean, we don't need to see them anymore. I mean, do we?
Jamie Miller, agreed. Steve?
Agreed. Yeah, Vice Chair.
I was
Steve.
I was
Agreed.
still caught up. We still haven't clarified this right here. The whole design narrative, all this other stuff. So I don't know how we want to.
Jamie Miller, Chair. This goes back to Steve's, overall, general project information or something along, or overall project information.
Steve Law, Vice Chair. Yeah, I think overall design narrative is fine. John, I think you were trying to separate the descriptive narrative and the photographs for some concern.
Yeah, John's Bell member. I just still don't think a design concept narrative has photographs associated with it.
Jamie Miller, Chair, but I think that's the point. Is I think design concept narrative that's what gets changed so that those two things can live in the same boxes. I just don't know what those words want to be. Steve?
Vice Chair, isn't that a matter of semantics? Are you referring to the term narrative?
Yeah, John Zabel member. Like I said, this short description is a narrative, and then the photographs are existing context and proposed plan or something like that.
Jamie Miller Chair, changing that bullet point to what? To say,
Just something
Jamie Miller Chair, I agree. That's what I mean. I think that has to change. And if you know, and then those two check boxes can live together in the same group. We have to decide what that heading wants to say. John, what did you just said? What did you just say?
existing site use and propose something like that, something to get to. They're going to tell us what's there now. They're going to tell us, John's Bell member, by the way, they're going to tell us what's there now, and they're going to tell us what's proposed, both with photographs and this design narrative. That's why I didn't mind design narrative as its own piece of paper. They're going to give us something in writing, and then they're going to give us some photos of the existing property. Then they're going to give us all this stuff about the proposed plan. That's the only thing. I want them to know that we need this separate narrative right up. I think that's been very useful.
Steve
Law, Vice Chair. So John, if you just take the word narrative off of the bullet and put it in the checklist, short narrative or short narrative description.
Yep.
Or narrative description, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then Steve Law, Vice Chair, and then the title of the bullet can be whatever we want, overall project concepts or
Jamie Miller Chair, I'm for conceptual product design. I mean, look, I'm okay with that. You know, it's just, unless someone has some other better term for that. I mean, I think it's just the general information, which includes the photographs of the site, a narrative about what you're going to do. That those feel like they can live together to me. So,
or conceptual project, John Zabel member, conceptual project plan, something.
You could just say project description.
And then take the word description out of Jamie Miller, out of the next one. Just say short narrative outlining. Just take the word description out.
yeah.
So you don't have it twice. I like that. Jamie Miller Chair. I think that reads fine.
Nail it.
All right. So, are we ready? Are we feeling comfortable here about, this is me, and I rightly so looking to use this. Steve?
Yes.
Steve Law,
Yes.
Vice Chair. Do we need any footers, page numbers or anything?
Jamie Miller Chair, I think, no, you mean putting the page numbers on the application?
No, but just in the footer, either that or a date stamp of some sort as a footer.
Jamie Miller Chair, yes, it should have, because we're going to have, ultimately there'll be revision. So there should be a date, the bottom right, that will get a revision date to it as time goes on.
Yeah.
All right, so are we comfortable voting on this tonight so that this can be utilized for this application next month? I mean, I guess, Steve, make a motion, Steve, and then we're gonna vote and we'll see if everyone agrees with us or not.
Steve Law, Vice Chairman, I make a motion that we accept the draft of the Architectural Review Board application form and the corresponding checklist as amended tonight on January 14th.
Okay, is there a second to Steve's? Tom Sarkowitz seconds. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so the application and the checklist passed unanimously. Thanks, everybody. This has been a long night, but I think it's good, and I'm feeling. I hope you guys are, but I'm feeling good about where we are. So that being said, I'm going to guess there's not any further member comments, concerns, or questions right now. Good. Okay. So then, that being said, is there a motion to adjourn? Steve,
Steve Law, Vice Chair, as long as John Zabel's okay with making the final tweaks, I make a motion, we adjourn.
is there a second? Tom Sarkowitz, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye, meeting adjourned. John, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you,
Alright,
John.
John,
Thanks,
please
everyone.
email me.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, John.
Thanks, Aileen, for a long meeting. Hang
John-
in with
Aileen,
us.
I was wondering if you were still there. You
I just
went
had to
away
take a
the
little
entire
nap.
That's what I was gonna say.
time.
John, when you get a chance tomorrow, please email this revised application. It has to go with the minutes and file with the town clerk.
Okay, with John Zabel member, like I said, I'm gonna accept all changes. They don't need my signature anywhere on this thing that I made
No.
the track changes. I will save in my personal drive a track change, just so we do have it. Or you could do a later compare with the two. That's probably the easiest.
No, you just send me the edited document. That's it.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
All right,
All right.
everybody.
All
All
right.
right, have a good
Have a
night,
good night,
everybody.
everybody.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
This conference will now be recorded.